The galaxy had forgotten about Earth. That was exactly how humanity wanted it. Deep in the cold darkness of the asteroid belt, 200 warships floated in perfect silence. Their engines were cold. Their lights were dim. Inside each vessel, thousands of humans slept in frozen pods, dreaming of nothing at all. They had waited like this for 80 years, patient as stones, ready for a war that might never come. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of the UN Prometheus, the flagship of the sleeper fleet. She was 62 years old, but the cryosleep had kept her body young. Her black hair was tied back in a tight bun, and her dark eyes watched the stars through the main viewport. Behind her, only a skeleton crew worked at their stations. Everyone else slept. Anything new? She asked her communications officer. Nothing, Admiral. Same as yesterday. Same as last year. Tanaka nodded slowly. She had heard this answer 10,000 times. The galaxy was quiet, at least for humanity. The rest of the universe had made sure of that. 300 years ago, the Galactic Concordat had discovered Earth. The Concordat was a union of over 4,000 alien species who had lived together in peace for millions of years. They had explored every corner of the galaxy. They had met creatures of every shape and size, but they had never seen anything like Earth. The Concordat scientists had studied the small blue planet from orbit. What they found terrified them. Earth had a crushing gravity that would break the bones of most species. Its atmosphere was filled with oxygen, a gas so dangerous that it could cause fires and rust metal. The planet's temperature swung wildly between burning heat and freezing cold. Massive storms swept across its surface. Earthquakes split the ground. Volcanoes poured fire into the sky. And then there were the humans. The scientists watched as these strange creatures hunted animals twice their size. They saw humans survive injuries that would kill any other species. They observed how humans could run for hours without stopping, how they could eat plants and meat, and even poisonous things, how they healed from wounds that should have been fatal. The humans were not the only dangerous things on Earth, but they were the most dangerous. They had conquered their death world through pure stubbornness and refused to die. The Concordat Council met in emergency session. The debate lasted only 1 hour. The decision was unanimous. Earth was classified as a Class 7 death world, the most dangerous category. A quarantine zone was established around the entire solar system. Automated warning buoys were placed at every approach, broadcasting the same message in 10,000 languages. Deathworld species contained. Do not approach. Do not engage. The galaxy moved on and tried to forget that Earth existed, but Earth did not forget the galaxy. 80 years ago, human scientists cracked the secret of faster-than-light travel. The first human ship to leave the solar system was small and unarmed. Its crew was hopeful. They dreamed of meeting alien civilizations, of learning from ancient cultures, of joining a galactic community. Instead, they found the buoys. The crew sat in shocked silence as the translation software decoded the message. Contained, quarantined, forbidden. The galaxy did not want humanity. The galaxy was afraid of humanity. The ship returned to Earth with the news. There was anger. There was sadness. There was bitter disappointment. But in the end, there was also understanding. The humans had seen themselves through alien eyes, and they knew why the galaxy feared them. They were predators. They were survivors. They were the children of a world that had tried to kill them every single day. And they had one. If the galaxy would not welcome them, then humanity would wait. They would build. They would prepare. And when the day came that the galaxy needed them or threatened them, they would be ready. The sleeper fleet was born from this decision. 200 of the most powerful warships humanity had ever built, hidden among the asteroids where no alien would ever look. Their crews slept in rotation, a few hundred awake at any time, maintaining the ships and watching the stars. They trained constantly. They improved their weapons. They studied every species in the Concordat, learning their strengths and weaknesses. Admiral Tanaka had commanded the fleet for 20 years. She had watched younger officers grow old while she stayed frozen in time. She had celebrated victories in war games that no enemy would ever see. She had given her entire life to a fleet that might never fire a single shot. Some nights, she wondered if it was all for nothing. Admiral. The communications officer sat up straight, his eyes wide. "We're receiving a signal." Tanaka turned sharply. "What kind of signal?" It's on the old Concordat emergency frequency. The one from before the quarantine." The officer's hands trembled as he worked his controls. "Someone is broadcasting an SOS. Put it through." Static filled the bridge. Then a voice emerged, thin and terrified, speaking in a language that the computer quickly translated. "Please. Anyone who can hear this, please help us. They came from the dark between the stars. They are taking us. They are harvesting our people. Our ships cannot fight them. Our soldiers cannot stop them. The Concordat will not answer. No one will answer." The voice broke into sobs. "They are killing the children. Please, anyone." The message repeated. Tanaka listened to it 3 times, her face expressionless. The bridge crew stared at her, waiting. "Where is this coming from?" she asked quietly. "The Velen system, Admiral. 12,000 light years from here." Tanaka closed her eyes. The Velen system. She knew the name from the intelligence files. 3 peaceful species living together on a cluster of garden worlds. They were herbivores, gentle and kind, known for their art and philosophy. They had never fought a war. They did not even have weapons. And now something was harvesting them. As the Concordat responded, Tanaka asked, "We're picking up their communications, Admiral. They're arguing. Some want to send help. Others say it's too dangerous. Most are just..." The officer paused. "Most are just running." Tanaka opened her eyes. For 80 years, the galaxy had kept humanity in a cage. For 80 years, they had been told they were too dangerous to be free. Now, somewhere far away, innocent people were screaming for help, and the entire galaxy was too afraid to answer. She thought about her orders. She thought about the quarantine. She thought about everything humanity had built in secret and silence. Then she thought about the children. "Wake the fleet," Admiral Tanaka said. The communications officer stared at her. "Admiral?" "All of them. Every ship. Every soldier." Tanaka turned to face the stars, her jaw set firm. "Tell them we have work to do." Across the asteroid belt, lights began to flicker on. Engines that had been cold for decades roared to life. Cryopods hissed open, and thousands of humans took their first gasping breaths in years. The Deathworlders were waking up, and the galaxy was not ready. Ambassador Tilveth pressed himself against the cold metal wall and tried not to breathe. Outside his hiding place, he could hear the clicking sounds of the invaders as they searched the station. Their legs tapped against the floor like knives on stone. Their mandibles snapped open and shut, hungry and eager. He was going to die here. He knew that now, but he had done what he could. He had sent the message. Someone, somewhere, might hear it. Someone might care. Tilveth was a Velain, a member of one of the 3 species that shared his home system. His people were small and thin, with 6 delicate limbs and large, gentle eyes. They had evolved on a world of endless gardens, where food grew everywhere and nothing ever tried to hurt them. They had never needed to fight. They had never needed to run. Now they were learning what it meant to be prey. The invaders had come 3 weeks ago. They had appeared from the darkness between galaxies, from a region of space so empty that no one had ever bothered to explore it. Their ships were massive and black, covered in strange organic shapes that looked like they had grown rather than been built. They did not answer any communication. They did not make demands. They simply attacked. The Kethari, the survivors called them. An ancient name from old records, a species that the Concordat had believed dead for 1,000,000 years. But they were not dead. They had been waiting in the dark, growing stronger, growing hungrier. And now they had returned. Tilveth had watched from his station as the Kethari ships surrounded his homeworld. He had seen the harvester pods descend through the atmosphere, collecting living beings by the thousands. The Kethari did not kill for conquest. They killed for food. They were farmers and every other species was their crop. The clicking sound grew closer. Tilveth squeezed his eyes shut and prayed to gods he had never really believed in. Then the sound stopped, moved away, faded into silence. He waited another hour before he dared to move. When he finally crawled out of his hiding space, the station was empty. The Kethari had taken everyone else. He was alone. For a long moment, Tilveth simply sat on the floor and wept out far across the galaxy. The Concordat Council was falling apart. The great chamber on the capital world of Thesan Prime had seen 10,000 years of peaceful debate. Representatives from 4,000 species had gathered here to discuss trade and art and philosophy. They had never discussed war. They had never needed to. Now they were screaming at each other. "We must send ships," shouted the representative from the Mora Collective. "The Velans are members of the Concordat. We have a duty to protect them." "With what?" replied the Thesan Prime Minister, her voice cold. "Our ceremonial fleet? Our cargo vessels? The Kethari dreadnoughts would destroy us in minutes. Then we must negotiate. Offer them something they want." "They want to eat us," said another representative quietly. "What would you offer them? Your own children?" The chamber exploded into chaos. Species pointed fingers at each other. Old grudges bubbled to the surface. Some representatives simply stood up and walked out, returning to their ships, preparing to flee. In the corner of the chamber, Councillor Miraset watched the madness with growing despair. She was a Thesan, a reptilian species with green scales and golden eyes. She had served on the council for 30 years and had never seen anything like this. The Concordat was supposed to be the greatest civilization in the galaxy. 4,000 species united in peace and prosperity. But now, facing their first real threat in millions of years, they were helpless. They had forgotten how to fight. They had evolved past violence, past aggression, past everything that might have saved them. They were going to die. All of them. One species at a time. The Kethari would harvest them all, unless Miraset thought about the forbidden files she had accessed years ago. The classified records from 3 centuries past. The death world called Earth. The predator species called humans. She thought about the quarantine buoys that surrounded their system. The warnings that called them dangerous, savage, uncontrolled. She thought about how the Concordat had locked them away like monsters. Maybe. Miraset realized monsters were exactly what the galaxy needed right now. Moving quietly, she slipped out of the chamber and hurried to her private office. Her hands shook as she accessed the secret communication system. What she was about to do was illegal. It might even be considered treason. But what good was law when everyone was dead? She found the SOS that Ambassador Tilveth had broadcast. With a few commands, she copied it and sent it on a new trajectory. This time, it would bypass the quarantine buoys. This time, it would reach the one place no one else would think to ask for help. She sent it to Seoul, on the bridge of the UEM Prometheus. Admiral Tanaka watched the recording for the 3rd time. The Velan ambassador's voice echoed through the silent bridge. The crew listened with clenched fists and burning eyes. "They're killing children," Lieutenant Commander Chun whispered. "Those things are killing children, and no one is helping." "The Concordat doesn't know how to help," Tanaka replied. "They've never had to fight. They've never had anything to fight for." "So, what do we do, Admiral?" Tanaka looked at the star map on the main screen. 12,000 light-years to the Violent System. 3 weeks at maximum speed. Every hour they delayed, more innocent people died. She thought about her orders. The Sleeper Fleet existed to defend humanity, to protect Earth. They had no mandate to fight other species' wars. They had no authorization to break the quarantine. But Tanaka had read the old books, the ones from before humanity reached the stars. She knew the stories of soldiers who had crossed oceans to fight evil. She knew about the wars against genocide, the battles against tyranny. She knew what her ancestors had believed, what they had fought for, what they had died for. "We were not made to hide," she said slowly. "We were made to protect." The bridge crew looked at her. "The galaxy calls us monsters." Maybe they're right. Maybe we are something dark and dangerous that should have stayed buried. Tanaka stood straight, her voice growing stronger. "But there are worse monsters out there. And right now, those monsters are eating children while the rest of the galaxy runs away." She turned to face her crew. "I'm not going to run. I'm not going to hide. I'm going to find those things, and I'm going to kill every last one of them." Her eyes swept across the bridge. "Anyone who doesn't want to come can stay behind. I won't force you to break the quarantine." No one moved. "Then let's go save some lives." The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the solar system behind. Across 200 ships, 50,000 humans prepared for war. They checked their weapons. They studied the enemy. They wrote letters to loved ones they might never see again. They were afraid. Of course they were afraid. Only fools felt no fear before battle, but they were also angry. They had seen the recordings of the Cathari attacks. They had heard the screams. They had watched peaceful, gentle creatures die simply because they could not fight back. The humans could fight back. And they were coming. In the Velen system, Ambassador Tilveth sat in the darkness of his empty station and waited for the end. He did not know that help was on the way. He did not know that his message had reached the one species in the galaxy that might actually answer. He only knew that somewhere, somehow, someone had to care. And they did. The Cathari Hive Admiral floated at the center of his command chamber, surrounded by screens that showed every part of the conquered system. His species did not have names the way others did. They had functions. He was the mind that controlled the swarm, the brain that guided 10,000 ships and 1 billion soldiers. The harvest was going well. 3 worlds had been stripped of their populations. The processing ships were full of fresh meat. Soon the fleet would move on to the next system and the next and the next. The Concordat species were soft and weak, easy prey for the Cathari hunger. Then his sensors screamed a warning. Ships were appearing at the edge of the system, not jumping in at safe distances like civilized species did. They were emerging from faster-than-light travel directly into the combat zone, a maneuver so dangerous that it should have torn them apart. But they were not torn apart. They were intact. They were armed. And they were heading straight for his fleet at impossible speed. Unknown vessels. The Hive Admiral broadcast on all frequencies. "Identify yourselves or be destroyed." The response came in a language his translators had never heard. But the meaning was clear enough. "This is the United Earth Navy. We answer your call. Stand clear." Then the humans opened fire. Ambassador Telveth had given up hope 3 days ago. He had watched from his station as the last of his people were taken. He had seen the great cities of his homeworld go dark, one by one. He was alone in the universe, waiting to die. The first explosion lit up the sky like a new sun. Tilveth scrambled to the viewport and stared in disbelief. Flashes of light filled the darkness of space. Ships were burning. Debris was spreading in great clouds of fire. And through it all, strange new vessels were cutting through the Cathari, fleet like predators through prey. He had never seen ships like these. They were smaller than the Cathari dreadnoughts, but faster and more aggressive. They did not fight the way Concordat ships fought, with careful distance and precision strikes. They charged directly at the enemy. They rammed into larger vessels. They got so close that the Cathari could not miss them, then unleashed weapons of terrifying power. Tilveth watched as a human ship flew straight at a Cathari harvester. The harvester fired everything it had. Plasma burned across the human ship's hull. Pieces of metal flew away into space. The ship should have died. It did not die. The burning vessel crashed directly into the harvester's bridge, and both ships exploded together. "What are they?" Tilveth whispered. "What are they?" On the surface of the Velen homeworld, Sergeant Maria Santos led her squad through the ruins of a city that had been beautiful just weeks ago. Now it was ash and silence. The Cathari had taken everyone. Almost everyone. "Movement ahead," whispered Private Chun. "Looks like survivors, Velen. Maybe 20 of them." Santos raised her fist to halt the squad. Through her helmet's sensors, she could see the huddled group of aliens in a collapsed building. They were small and fragile, their 6 limbs wrapped around each other in fear. Most of them were children. She could also see the Cathari patrol approaching from the other direction. 20 soldiers, their insectoid bodies covered in natural armor, their claws designed for cutting flesh. "We take them," Santos said. "Fast and quiet. Protect the civilians." "There are 20 of us and 20 of them," said Private OKONKWO. Santos smiled behind her helmet. "Then it's a fair fight." The Cathari had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had faced every kind of prey the galaxy had to offer. They had never faced a predator. The humans came out of the shadows like nightmares. Their exoskeleton suits made them strong enough to punch through armor. Their weapons fired solid metal slugs that tore through Cathari bodies like paper. They moved together with perfect coordination, covering each other, advancing relentlessly. But it was not just their weapons or their tactics that broke the Cathari patrol. It was their eyes. The Velen survivors watched as the strange aliens fought. They saw how the humans looked at the Cathari, with hatred and fury and something else, something the translator A's struggled to explain. The closest word was spite. The humans were not just fighting to win. They were fighting to make the enemy suffer. In 60 seconds, it was over. 20 Cathari lay dead. The humans had not lost a single soldier. Sergeant Santos approached the survivors slowly, removing her helmet so they could see her face. The Velens shrank back in terror. She was a predator. They could see it in her eyes, in the way she moved, in the muscles that coiled beneath her skin. "It's okay," she said softly. "We're here to help." One of the children, smaller than the others, crept forward on trembling limbs. It reached out a thin arm toward Santos. She knelt down and let the child touch her hand. "Are you the monsters?" the child asked. "The ones from the Forbidden World?" Santos looked at the child for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Yes," she said. "We're the monsters, and we're going to protect you." A Cathari soldier appeared from the ruins, its plasma rifle raised. It fired at the child. Santos moved without thinking. She threw herself in front of the blast, taking the shot directly in her chest. The impact threw her backward, but she rolled, raised her weapon, and fired. The Cathari fell. The Velen survivors stared in shock. Santos stood up slowly, smoke rising from the burned armor on her chest. She should be dead. Any Velen would be dead. But she simply checked her weapon and looked around for more enemies. "Sergeant?" Private Chun asked. You okay? Fine, Santos said. Her voice was tight with pain, but her hands were steady. Just a burn. We keep moving. Get these people to safety. The Velen child looked up at the human who had taken fire for them. For the first time in weeks, something other than fear appeared in its eyes. Hope. In orbit. The battle raged on. The humans were outnumbered 10-1, but they fought like nothing the Cathari had ever seen. They did not retreat when they were damaged. They did not surrender when they were surrounded. They fought until they could not fight anymore. And then they found a way to fight some more. The Hive Admiral watched his fleet burning and felt something he had not felt in a million years. Fear. These creatures were wrong. They came from a world that should have killed them. They survived wounds that should have ended them. They attacked when they should have fled. They died laughing, screaming defiance with their last breath. What were they? The answer came from his scientists, pulled from the ancient records of the Deathworlders. Humans, the apex predators of a world so dangerous that the galaxy had locked them away and tried to forget them. Now they were here, and they were angry. The Hive Admiral made a decision. This battle was lost. Too many ships had been destroyed, too many soldiers killed. But the swarm was vast. The Cathari Dominion had resources beyond counting. If these humans wanted a war, the Cathari would give them one. All ships, he broadcast. Withdraw. Regroup at the dark space coordinates. The Cathari fled. For the first time in their long history, they ran from prey. But the Hive Admiral was not defeated. He was planning new species, he transmitted to the swarm. Predator class. Origin. Death world. Acquire samples. Acquire all. If the humans would not be conquered, then they would be studied. And if they could not be studied, they would be destroyed, starting with their homeworld. The Hive Admiral set course for a small, yellow star 12,000 light-years away. He set course for Sol. He was bringing the entire swarm with him. The news spread across the galaxy like fire, on every world, on every station, on every ship with a communication system. Beings of every species watched the recordings from the Velen system. They saw the impossible ships that had appeared from nowhere. They saw weapons of savage power tearing through Cathari armor. They saw soldiers in metal suits fighting with their bare hands when their guns ran empty. They saw humans. For 3 centuries, the galaxy had told itself stories about the Deathworlders. They were monsters. They were savages. They were so dangerous that the only safe option was to lock them away and forget they existed. The quarantine was for everyone's protection. Now the galaxy watched as those monsters saved innocent lives. They watched humans throw themselves in front of plasma fire to protect alien children. They watched human medics treating Velen wounded with gentle hands. They watched human soldiers sharing their food with starving refugees. The Concordat Council called an emergency session. Every representative who could reach Thesan Prime gathered in the Great Chamber. The ones who had fled in fear returned with shame in their eyes. They had run. The humans had not. This is a violation of the quarantine, shouted the representative from the Morn Collective. The humans had no right to leave their system. And what would you have done? Replied Counselor Miraset, her voice cutting through the noise. Watch the Velens die? Is that what the Concordat stands for now? Watching? The quarantine exists for a reason. The quarantine exists because we were afraid. Miraset stepped forward into the center of the chamber. We looked at the humans and saw predators. We saw violence. We saw everything we had evolved past, everything we wanted to forget about the universe. So we locked them away. She gestured to the screens that showed the aftermath of the battle. Human ships surrounded the Velen homeworld, keeping watch. Human soldiers patrolled the ruined cities, hunting the last Cathari stragglers. Human doctors worked around the clock to save the wounded. We were right about what they are, Miraset said. They are predators. They are violent. They are dangerous beyond anything we can imagine. She paused. And they came anyway. Not to conquer us. Not to harm us. They came because someone was hurting innocents, and they could not stand by and watch. The chamber fell silent. The Cathari are still out there, Miraset continued. They will return. They will come for all of us, one system at a time. When they come to your world, who will answer your call? Will the Concordat debate for months while your children are harvested? Or will you hope that somewhere, somehow, the monsters might hear you? Before anyone could respond, a new alert flashed across every screen. Intelligence officers across the chamber began shouting that the Cathari swarm had been detected. 2,000 hive ships, moving as one. Their destination was not another Concordat world. Their destination was Sol. They were going to destroy the Death World. Admiral Tanaka received the news on the bridge of the Prometheus. She listened without expression as her intelligence officer explained the situation. The entire Cathari Dominion was coming. 2,000 ships against the 200 she had left after the battle. They would reach Earth in 3 weeks. Can we win? Asked Lieutenant Commander Chen quietly. Tanaka did not answer immediately. She had run the numbers a dozen times. Her fleet had won the battle of the Velen system through surprise and aggression. The Cathari had not known what they were facing. Now they did. They would come prepared. They would come with overwhelming force. We can make them pay, Tanaka said finally. We can hurt them so badly that they'll think twice about coming back. But win? She shook her head slowly. No, not alone. Then what do we do? Tanaka thought about Earth, about the cities she had grown up in, about the mountains and oceans and forests, about the 8 billion people who had no idea what was coming for them. She thought about her mother's grave in Kyoto. She thought about the little apartment in New Tokyo where she had learned to read. She thought about everything humanity had ever built, ever dreamed, ever fought for. And she knew what she had to do. We go home, she said. We make our stand. And we pray that we're not the only ones willing to fight. On Thiessen Prime, Councilor Miraset stood before the Concordat Council and made the most important speech of her life. You all know what is happening, she said. The Cathari are going to Sol. They are going to destroy the humans. And when the humans are gone, they will come for us. All of us. The chamber was silent. Thousands of representatives watched her with fearful eyes. For 300 years, we have told ourselves that the quarantine was the right choice. We were civilized. They were not. We had evolved past violence. They had not. We were better than them. She took a deep breath. We were wrong. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The humans are not better than us. They are not worse than us. They are different. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every single day, and they survived. They learned to fight because they had no other choice. They learned to protect each other because alone, they would have died. Miraset pointed at the screen showing human soldiers caring for Velen refugees. Look at them. Look at what they do with their violence. They do not conquer. They protect. They do not enslave. They rescue. They took their death world nature, the same nature we feared and locked away, and they used it to save strangers they had never met. Her voice rose with passion. The humans stood for us when no one else would. They broke their quarantine to answer a call for help. They risked everything, gave everything, because they could not watch innocent people die. She slammed her fist on the podium. Will we not stand for them? For a long moment, no one spoke. No one moved. Then, slowly, a single representative stood. The Velen ambassador, newly rescued, his thin limbs still bandaged from his injuries. He could barely walk, but he forced himself upright. Vila stands with the humans, he said. "We will send every ship we have." Another representative stood. Then another. And another. "The Moran Collective will send aid," said the representative who had complained about the quarantine just minutes ago. His voice was small with shame. "Whatever we can give." "The Thesan Navy stands ready," said the Prime Minister, her cold voice finally holding something like warmth. One by one, species after species, the Concordat rose. Their ships were small. Their weapons were weak. Their soldiers had never fought a war. But they were going, because the humans had taught them something. Not how to fight, something more important. How to try. Admiral Tanaka stood on the bridge of the Prometheus as her fleet approached the solar system. Earth hung in the distance like a blue marble, beautiful and fragile. "Home, Admiral," said her communications officer. "We're receiving transmissions from the outer system. Multiple sources. Hundreds of them. Cathari?" "No, ma'am." The officer's voice was thick with emotion. "Concordat, Velen, Moran, Thesan, over 40 species. They're coming to fight with us." Tanaka's heart stopped. On the main screen, she could see them. Small ships, fragile ships, ships that had never been built for war. They were gathering at the edge of the solar system, forming up alongside the sleeper fleet. Their signals were full of fear and uncertainty. But they were here. They had come to stand with the monsters. "Open a channel," Tanaka said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were wet. "All ships, all frequencies." The channel opened. Tanaka looked at Earth, at the fleet around her, at the galaxy that had finally chosen to fight. "This is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the United Earth Navy. 3 centuries ago, the galaxy told us we were too dangerous to be free. Maybe they were right. But today, we fight together. Not as humans. Not as Velens or Morans or Thessans. As one people, standing against the darkness." She took a deep breath. "The Cathari are coming. They think they will find easy prey. They are wrong. Today, they face the galaxy united. Today, they learn what it means to challenge a death world." The Cathari swarm dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. The Hive Admiral looked at his sensors and expected to see a dying fleet waiting to be slaughtered. Instead, he saw a wall of ships. Human warships bristling with weapons. Alien vessels of every shape and size. They were arranged in a perfect defensive formation, blocking the path to Earth. The Hive Admiral felt fear again. But he was committed now. The swarm was here. The battle would be fought. A human voice came over the communication channel. Female, cold, unafraid. "Welcome to Earth," Admiral Tanaka said. "You're not leaving." The Battle of Sol began with fire. 2,000 Cathari hive ships surged forward like a swarm of hungry insects. Their weapons lit up the darkness, sending beams of plasma and waves of missiles toward the defending fleet. Space itself seemed to burn. Admiral Tanaka watched from the bridge of the Prometheus as the first ships died. A Velen cruiser, barely armed, vanished in a flash of light. A Moran transport, filled with volunteer soldiers who had never held a weapon until a week ago, broke apart under concentrated fire. They were dying for humanity. Strangers from a galaxy that had feared and caged them were dying to protect Earth. "All ships," Tanaka broadcast. "This is the Admiral. They came for us. They're bleeding for us. Now show them what that means to a Deathworlder. Show them what we do for family." The human fleet charged. The Cathari had studied the recordings from the Velen system. They knew about human tactics. They knew about the ramming, the close-quarters combat, the refusal to retreat. They thought they were prepared. They were wrong. The humans did not fight like they had before. They fought with the desperation of creatures protecting their home. They fought with the fury of predators defending their pack. They fought with the terrible creativity of a species that had spent its entire history finding new ways to survive. Ships that should have been destroyed kept firing. Soldiers that should have died kept fighting. The humans threw everything they had at the swarm, and the swarm began to crumble. But it was not enough that the Cathari numbers were too great. For every hive ship that fell, 3 more took its place. The human fleet was shrinking, ship by ship. The Allied vessels were being picked apart. On the Prometheus, alarm screamed. The hull was breached in a dozen places. Fire suppression systems struggled to contain the flames. Half the crew was dead or wounded. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Commander Chun, blood running down his face from a cut on his forehead. "We can't keep this up. We're losing." Tanaka knew he was right. She had known from the beginning that this battle could not be won through normal means. But she had hoped. She had prayed. She had believed that somehow the universe would not be so cruel. Now she understood what had to be done. "How close can you get me to the Hive Admiral's flagship?" she asked quietly. Chun stared at her. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by horror. "Admiral, no. There has to be another way." "There isn't." Tanaka's voice was calm. "The Cathari are hive-minded. They follow their admiral. If we cut off the head, the body will stumble. The swarm will lose coordination. Our allies can pick them apart, but you'll die." Tanaka smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "Everyone dies, Commander. The only question is what we die for." She stood and looked around the bridge one last time. These were her people. Her family. She had spent 20 years of her life with them, and she loved them more than she could ever say. "Get the crew to the escape pods," she ordered. "That's an order. I'll fly the Prometheus myself." "Admiral." "Go." Her voice hardened. "Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them we didn't run. Tell them." She paused. "Tell them it was worth it." The bridge crew evacuated. Chun was the last to go. He stopped at the door and looked back at his admiral. "Give them hell, Yuki," he said. She smiled. "I always do." The Prometheus turned toward the Cathari flagship. It was the largest ship in the swarm, a massive organic structure that pulsed with dark energy. The Hive Admiral waited at its heart, commanding his forces with cold precision. He saw the human vessel approaching. He ordered his ships to destroy it. Plasma fire converged on the Prometheus from every direction. The ship burned. Its armor melted. Its weapons went silent. But it did not stop. The Hive Admiral felt something he had not felt in a million years. Not just fear, terror. "What are you?" He broadcast on all frequencies. What kind of creature faces death with such madness? Tanaka's response came through the static, her voice calm despite the inferno around her. "We're human, and this is what we do for family." The Prometheus crashed into the Hive Admiral's flagship at full speed. The impact tore through armor and bone and metal. Nuclear reactors ruptured. Explosions chained through both vessels. For a single moment, the darkness of space was replaced by the brightness of a newborn star. The Hive Admiral died. The swarm felt his death like a physical blow. Across 2,000 ships, the connection that held them together shattered. Individual Cathari found themselves alone in their own minds for the first time in their lives. Chaos erupted. The Allied fleet struck. Marin gunners, who had never fired a weapon in anger, suddenly found their targets. Velen pilots who had trained for only days somehow dodged attacks they should not have seen coming. Thesan captains who had spent their careers in peaceful trade discovered a warrior's instinct they never knew they had. They fought like humans. Ambassador Tilvith was at the controls of a small shuttle, the only vessel he could find. He had no weapons. He had no training. He only had a burning need to help the people who had saved his species. A Cathari hive ship loomed before him. Its engines were exposed, vulnerable. If someone could reach them, the ship would be crippled. Tilva thought about his people. He thought about the children who had survived because of human sacrifice. He thought about Sergeant Santos, who had taken fire for a stranger's child without hesitation. He flew his shuttle directly into the hive ship's engines. The explosion was beautiful. The hive ship spun out of control, crashing into two of its companions. All three ships died together. Tilveth's shuttle was thrown clear by the blast. He was injured, barely conscious, but alive. Against all odds, he was alive. The battle turned. The swarm, leaderless and confused, began to retreat. The Allied fleet pressed their advantage. Ship after ship fell to the combined fire of a galaxy-united dot when it was over. The Cathari were broken. The survivors fled into dark space, wounded and afraid. They would not return. They would tell stories of the Deathworld and its defenders for generations. Stories of the humans who would not stop fighting. Stories of the galaxy that had learned to stand together. Stories of Admiral Yuki Tanaka, who gave her life so that others might live. 1 year later, the Galactic Concordat voted unanimously. The quarantine was lifted. The warning buoys were removed. Humanity was invited to join the galactic community, not as equals, but as protectors. The Galactic Defense Initiative was created. Human commanders trained Allied soldiers. Human engineers helped design new weapons. Human medics taught alien doctors how to save lives on the battlefield. The galaxy had not become human. It had become something better. It had become brave. On Earth, in the city of New Geneva, a monument was built. It showed Admiral Tanaka standing with her hand outstretched, reaching toward the stars. At her feet, an inscription read, "We answer your call." Ambassador Tilveth stood on a balcony overlooking the monument. A year of recovery had healed his body, but not his heart. He still dreamed of fire and screaming. He still woke in the night, terrified that the Cathari had returned. But today was a good day. The sun was warm. The sky was clear. And below, in the gardens surrounding the monument, human children played alongside Velen children, Morin children, decent children. "Does it still frighten you?" asked a voice beside him. Tilveth turned. A human diplomat stood nearby, young and curious. "Does what frighten me?" "Being here, living among predators." The diplomat gestured at the city around them. "We are everything your people evolved to fear. Fast, strong, aggressive. Some of the other species still have trouble relaxing around us." Tilveth considered the question. He watched a little human girl help a fallen Velen boy to his feet. She brushed dirt from his thin arms and made sure he was not hurt. When he smiled, she smiled back. "No," Tilveth said softly. "I am not frightened." "Why not?" "Because I understand now what you are." Tilveth turned to face the diplomat. "You are predators, yes, but you are also protectors. Your strength exists to defend the weak. Your fury burns for those who cannot fight for themselves. You are dangerous because you choose to be dangerous for the sake of those you love." He looked back at the children playing below. "I was there when your admiral died," he said. "I heard her last words. She called us family. Strangers she had never met, species that had locked her people in a cage for 300 years. She died for us because she could not watch innocents suffer." Tears formed in his large, gentle eyes. "I do not fear you," Ambassador Tilva said. "I fear what might have happened if you had never answered." The diplomat was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled. "We will always answer," she said. "That's what humans do." Above them, the sky darkened toward evening. Stars began to appear, thousands of points of light stretching across the universe. Somewhere out there, new threats were stirring. New dangers were gathering. The galaxy was vast and old and filled with terrors, but it was no longer alone. The Deathworlders were awake, and they would stand with the galaxy against whatever darkness came next, because that was what family did.